The planet Sylvan was a dead place. The sky was a dull orange, forever cloudy with dust. The ground was hard rock and red sand, broken by the shells of dead spaceships. This was the graveyard, a place where ships came to die. For Jin, it was a place to try to live. Jin was a scavenger. He moved through the giant canyons of metal looking for anything he could use or trade. His environment suit was old and worn. It was patched in many places with tape and scrap metal. The helmet's visor was scratched. The most important part, the air system, was failing. A small screen on his wrist showed his oxygen level. The number was low and colored a warning orange. He had maybe an hour of air left. Maybe less. His boots crunched on the dry ground. He was heading for a large wreck. It was a Tulkun freighter. The Tulkun were a big species and their ships were built strong. If he was lucky, he would find a working air filter or a full oxygen tank inside. It was his best hope. His own small ship, a rusty pod hidden a mile away, had no more air. This trip to the freighter was his last chance. He climbed over a broken wing. The metal groaned under his feet. The wind blew, a dry whisper that carried the smell of rust and old fuel. It was the only sound. He was completely alone. He looked at his wrist again. The oxygen number ticked down. He needed to focus. The entrance to the freighter should be just ahead, through a crack in the hull. As he walked, a strange light caught his eye. It was not the harsh white of a broken light panel. It was not the red glow of a warning sign. This light was a soft blue. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. It came from a deep crack in the ground between two huge pieces of a ship's engine. Jin stopped. He did not have time for this. Every minute was precious air. He should ignore it. Strange things in the graveyard usually meant danger. A leaking power core, an unstable reactor, things that could kill a man. But the light was so calm, so beautiful. It was unlike anything he had ever seen here. Against his better judgment, his feet carried him toward the edge of the crack. He peered down. The crevice was deep. At the bottom, maybe 30 feet down, the blue light was stronger. He could see the source. It was a ship, but it was no ship he recognized. It was small, about the size of his own pod, but it was shaped like a smooth, perfect teardrop. Its surface was like white pearl, and it glowed with its own inner light. It was not broken. It looked like it had been placed there gently. Then he saw the pilot. She was lying against a large rock near the ship. Her form was long and slender. Her skin was pale and seemed to shimmer, reflecting the blue light. She wore clothes that looked like they were made of silver thread and starlight. She was clearly not human, and she was hurt. A dark, black mark stained her side. It looked like a burn, but it was creeping slowly, like a sickness. The light in her seemed to flicker where the black mark was. Her eyes were closed. Jin's first instinct was to run. An alien. A crash. This was trouble he did not need. His hand went to the tool on his belt, a plasma cutter for cutting metal. It was a weak weapon, but it was all he had. He was about to turn away when her eyes opened. They were large and a bright, liquid silver. They found him immediately. There was no shock, no fear, no plea for help. Just a deep, deep tiredness, an ancient sadness that seemed to fill the whole crevice. She looked at him, and then her eyes drifted to the small fancy vial that had fallen from her hand. A single drop of shiny silver liquid hung at its lip. The last drop. Jin's oxygen alarm beeped, a sharp sound in the quiet. A warning. 15 minutes of air remaining. The sound broke his stare. This was it. This was the moment to leave, to go to the freighter and find his air, to survive. But his legs felt heavy. He looked from the alien's dying form to the path that led to the freighter. His own life was measured in minutes. Hers seemed to be too. He saw his own lonely end in her silver eyes. What was the difference between dying here and dying in the freighter? At least here, he wouldn't be alone. It was a foolish thought. A stupid emotional thought that got scavengers killed. But he could not make himself leave. He slowly, carefully, climbed down into the crevice. The rocks were loose, and he slid the last few feet, landing with a grunt. He was now only a few steps from her. Up close, she was even more striking. Her features were delicate and perfect. The black wound on her side looked wrong, like a blot on a perfect painting. She watched him, her head tilted slightly. Jin did not know what to do. He was not a doctor. He had no medicine. He had nothing to give. He was a poor scavenger with an empty canteen and a broken ship. Wait. The canteen. It was clipped to his belt. It was not full. He had been saving the last few sips of water for a truly desperate moment. He unclipped it. The plastic was scratched and dirty. He felt a sudden shame at its ugliness. He knelt down, his suit creaking. He ignored the frantic beeping from his wrist. He held out the canteen. "Here," he said. His voice was rough and cracked from lack of use. "It's water. It's not much." The being looked at the canteen, then back at his face. Her silver eyes seemed to see right through his helmet, right into him. She saw his fear, his exhaustion, his own fading life. And she saw the simple, pointless kindness of the act. A very faint smile touched her lips. It was a sad smile, but a real one. She did not take the canteen. She did not need his water. Instead, she slowly raised a slender hand. Her fingers were long and graceful. She reached out and touched the front of his helmet, right over the place where his heart was beating fast. A wave of warmth spread through Jin's chest. It was a comforting heat, like sitting by a fire on a cold night. For a moment, all his worries seemed to fade. The constant gnawing fear he lived with was gone. And then, his oxygen alarm stopped beeping. He looked down at his wrist in shock. The orange warning light was gone. The oxygen level now showed a steady, calm green. The number was not full, but it was no longer falling. It was stable. It was as if time had stopped for his air supply. He looked back at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. Her hand fell back to her side. The effort seemed to have cost her. The light within her flickered more weakly. "Thank you," her voice said. But her lips did not move. The words were clear and soft, and they appeared directly in his mind. "You shared your final drop. You have a quiet heart." Jin could only stare. He had given her nothing, and she had given him more time to live. "Who are you?" he finally whispered. "I am Mirai," the voice in his mind replied. "And you have just shown me that the song of this galaxy is not yet over." Her silver eyes held his. "My journey ends here, but another must begin. Yours." The warmth from Mirai's touch lingered on Jin's chest, a strange comfort against the cold dread of the graveyard. He stared at his wrist screen, at the steady green light where a warning orange had been. His air was not refilled but frozen. It was as if the very molecules in his tank had been told to stop being used up. He could not understand it. He looked at the being, Mirai. She was slumped back against the rock, her strength clearly spent. The dark wound on her side seemed a little larger. The beautiful pearlescent ship behind her pulsed with a soft, sad light. "Why?" Jin asked, his voice still a rough scrape. "Why did you do that?" Mirai's silver eyes met his. The voice in his mind was weaker now, like a distant whisper. "You offered me a gift, the only one you had left. It is a powerful thing. My people understand this language." "Your people?" Jin knelt again, closer this time. The fear was gone, replaced by a deep curiosity. He was a scavenger. He learned the value of things by taking them apart. But he could not take this apart. "We are the Ethon," her thought voice came. "We are gardeners. We tend to life. We listen to the songs of stars and the whispers of growing things." A wave of profound sadness flowed from her. The universe grows loud now, full of shouting. The song is hard to hear. Jin thought of the warlord factions and the greedy corporations whose ship husks littered this graveyard. They were the loud ones. They took what they wanted. He just picked up the pieces they left behind. "The wound I carry, Mireille continued, her gaze drifting to the black mark. "It is not from a weapon you would know. It is a sickness of the spirit, a despair. My ship and I, we were the last of our kind in this part of the galaxy. We searched for an echo of our own song. We found only silence." She looked back at him. "Until you." Jin felt a heavy weight settle on him. He was just a man trying to survive. He was not an echo of some grand, ancient song. "I don't understand," he said honestly. "I just gave you some water." "You gave your final drop," Mireille corrected gently, "while you yourself were fading. That is not just water. That is a story. That is a choice. The Ethon built our greatest legacy to answer that kind of choice." She gestured weakly towards her ship. "There is a vessel, the last and greatest of our creations. It is called the Su-Riang." As she said the name, an image flashed in Jin's mind, a coiling, serpentine shape made of water and light, powerful and serene. The water dragon. It does not answer to commands. It answers to intent, to the quality of a soul. Jin listened, his mind trying to grasp the scale of what she was saying. A ship that read your mind? That answered your character? It sounded like a fairy tale. For ages, the powerful have hunted it. Mireille's voice was fading, becoming thin. Warlords and kings. They thought it was the ultimate weapon. They wanted to point it at their enemies and command the galaxy. But the Su-Riang would never answer them. It hides, it waits. It waits for a keeper, not a conqueror. She looked directly at him, her silver eyes burning with their last light. "It is here, Jin, hidden in this graveyard of ambitions. It has been waiting, and I believe it has been waiting for you." The statement was so enormous, so ridiculous that Jin almost laughed. Him, the owner of a legendary ship? He lived in a rusted pud. He was counting minutes of air. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because you look at a dying stranger and see a person, not a prize. Because you value a life even when your own is small. The Su-Riang was made to protect life, to nurture it. It needs a heart that understands that." She took a slow, pained breath. "My time is finished. My task was to find the next keeper. I have found him." Jin's head spun. This was too much. What would I even do with it? "What you have always done," Mireille replied. "Survive. But now you can help others survive too. The Su-Riang can heal a blighted world. It can calm an angry star. It can give life where there is only dust. You must learn its ways. You must teach it about humanity. Show it that we are more than the loud, greedy voices." She raised a trembling hand and pointed towards the far end of the canyon. "Go to the great wreck of the battleship Oblivion. Pass through its shadow. You will feel a pull, a warmth. Follow it. The Su-Riang will let you in." Jin looked in the direction she pointed. The Oblivion was a massive, terrifying ship, a monument to war. It was the last place he would ever want to go. He looked back at Mireille. The light in her was growing very dim. The black wound seemed to be consuming her from the inside. He felt a sudden sharp pain of loss. He had just met her, but her calm presence had changed everything. "Will you be here when I come back?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Mireille gave him one last beautiful smile. "I will be part of the song again. Do not be sad for me. My work is done. Yours is just beginning. Go, find your ship." Jin knew he had to go. His own air, while stable, was still low. He had a direction now, a purpose beyond just his next breath. He stood up. He felt taller. He looked at Mireille, this strange, wonderful being who had given him a future with her last moments. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling completely inadequate. "Go." "Jin." Her voice was now the faintest echo in his mind. "Be a good keeper." He turned and began to climb out of the crevice. It was harder than going down. His body felt heavy with the weight of her words. When he reached the top, he looked back down one last time. Mireille's form was barely visible, almost completely merged with the soft blue light of her own small ship. Then, as he watched, the light pulsed once brightly and then faded away into nothing. The crevice was dark. She was gone. A deep silence fell. The wind felt colder. Jin was alone again. But this time it was different. He looked at his wrist. The oxygen level was still green. He looked towards the monstrous wreck of the Oblivion. It was a long walk. He started moving, his steps firm and sure. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was a keeper. He had a task. He walked through the graveyard of metal. past the dreams of conquerors and kings heading for a shadow to find a dragon made of light. The universe had just become a much bigger and much stranger place. Create more chapters, headings, or parts numbers in each par. The silence felt heavier after Mirai was gone. Jin stood at the edge of the crevice for a long moment, staring into the darkness where her light had been. A part of him wanted to climb back down, to see if anything remained. But he knew there was nothing. She had given him her final gift, and it was a direction. He turned his back on the crevice and began to walk. His destination was the Oblivion. It was the largest wreck in this part of the graveyard, a massive, spear-shaped battleship that had crashed nose first into the canyon floor. Its stern pointed towards the orange sky like a broken finger. It was a symbol of pure violence, a place he had always avoided. Scavengers who went into the Oblivion often did not come out. It was filled with unstable reactors and old automated defense systems. As he walked, his mind raced. Could it be true? A legendary ship hidden here? It seemed impossible. This was a place where things came to die, not to be born. He was a practical man. He believed in what he could touch, what he could take apart and sell. The idea of a ship that answered to his intent felt like a dream. His boots crunched on the gravel. He kept checking his wrist screen. The oxygen level held steady. It was a small miracle, a constant reminder that what had happened with Mirai was real. He had not imagined her. The walk to the Oblivion took a long time. The ship loomed larger with every step, casting a deep, cold shadow that stretched for miles. The air grew colder as he entered its shade. He felt a nervous twist in his stomach. This was a bad place. He remembered Mirai's words. You will feel a pull, a warmth. Follow it. All he felt was a chill. The shadow of the Oblivion was like a physical weight. He saw the skeletons of other smaller ships that had crashed around it. This was a place of death. He walked deeper into the shadow. His eyes scanned the jagged metal landscape. He saw nothing but wreckage and dust. Doubt began to creep in. Had he misunderstood? Had it all been a hallucination from low oxygen? But his wrist screen still glowed a steady green. He was about to turn back to try and find his way to the Tulkun freighter for air after all, when he felt it. It was not a warmth, not at first. It was a vibration, a very low hum that he felt through the soles of his boots. It was so faint he thought it was his imagination. He stopped and stood perfectly still, listening. There it was, a deep, quiet thrum like a giant heart beating very slowly. It was coming from ahead, from a place where the shadow of the Oblivion was darkest. He followed the sound. It led him to a massive, crumpled wing from some other ship, jammed against the base of the battleship. The hum was stronger here. He squeezed through a narrow gap between the wing and the canyon wall, and then he saw it. It was not a hangar. There was no door. The rock wall of the canyon itself seemed to have opened up, forming a smooth, arched entrance that was not natural. The hum was coming from inside. A soft blue light glowed from within the opening, the same color as Mirai's ship. This was it. He stepped through the entrance. The air changed instantly. It was no longer thin and cold. It was warm and rich, and it smelled clean, like rain on fresh earth. He took a deep automatic breath, and his lungs felt clearer than they had in years. The cave was not large, and in the center of it, resting on the smooth stone floor, was the ship, the Su-Riang. The image Mirai had put in his mind did not do it justice. It was long and graceful, shaped like a serpent or a dragon at rest. Its hull was not metal. It looked like liquid mercury or flowing water, capturing the blue light of the cave and reflecting it in 1,000 shimmering patterns. There were no sharp edges, no engines he could see, no windows. It was a thing of pure, beautiful design. It looked alive. He approached it slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the craft every galaxy desired, and Mirai had said it was his. He stopped a few feet away. What was he supposed to do, knock? As if in answer, a section of the ship's hull rippled. The liquid metal flowed inward and upward, forming a smooth, seamless ramp that led into the ship's interior. The light from inside was a soft, welcoming gold. He climbed the ramp. His feet made no sound on the strange material. The inside of the ship was one open room. The walls were the same flowing material, glowing gently. The floor was soft and warm. In the center of the room, the floor rose to form a low, wide pedestal. There were no controls. No screens. No seats, nothing. He stepped onto the pedestal. The moment he did, the ramp behind him flowed shut, sealing him inside. There was no sound of a lock, just a smooth, quiet completion. He was inside. He was not scared. The air was easy to breathe. The ship felt peaceful. A soft chime sounded in the air. Then a presence filled his mind. It was not a voice like Mireille's, it was a feeling, a question. It was a simple, wordless feeling of welcome mixed with a gentle curiosity. Who are you? The thought formed in Jin's head, not in words, but in pure understanding. I am Jin, he said out loud, feeling a little foolish. The presence seemed to consider this. He felt a soft probe like a cat sniffing a new person. It felt his memories, his feelings. It felt his loneliness, his struggle to survive. It felt his simple act of giving water to Mireille. The presence seemed to settle, to become calm and accepting. A warmth spread through the room. The walls glowed a little brighter. He felt a clear, simple message. You are the keeper. I am yours. Then the wall in front of him shimmered. It became completely transparent. He was looking out at the cave, but it was more than seeing. He could feel the cave. He could feel the rock, the dust outside. He could feel the massive, cold presence of the oblivion looming above them. He understood. This was how he controlled the ship. Not with buttons, but with his mind. With his intent, he thought about lifting off. He formed a clear picture in his mind of the ship rising gently from the cave floor. The Suriang responded instantly. There was no roar of engines, no vibration. The ship simply lifted, floating upward as smoothly as a bubble in water. The transparent wall showed the cave ceiling approaching, but the ship did not slow. The solid rock above them parted like water, flowing around the hull without a sound, and they rose up through it, emerging into the deep shadow of the oblivion. He was flying. He was commanding the most desired ship in the galaxy with his thoughts. He looked down at the graveyard, at the vast field of dead ships where he had spent his life scratching out an existence. It looked small now, insignificant. He thought of Mireille. He had her legacy. He was no longer just Jin the scavenger. He was the keeper of the Suriang. He had a universe to explore and a purpose to learn. He formed a new intent in his mind. To go up, to leave this place. The water dragon turned its nose towards the orange sky and soared upward, silent as a dream, leaving the graveyard of ambitions far below. The orange clouds of Sylvan fell away beneath him. The silence inside the Suriang was absolute. There was no roar of engines, no shudder of metal straining against gravity. One moment he was in the shadow of the dead battleship, and the next, the planet was a dull orange ball hanging in the blackness of space. Jin stood at the center of the ship, his feet firmly on the soft floor. The entire wall before him was a window to the universe, clearer and sharper than any view screen he had ever seen. Stars blazed like diamonds on black velvet. He could see the faint swirl of a distant nebula, a cloud of glowing pink and blue. It was terrifying and beautiful. He was alone in a way he had never been before. On Sylvan, his loneliness was about being the only human for miles. Here his loneliness was about being a single living thing in an endless, cold sea. The immensity of it pressed down on him. The ship felt his unease. A gentle, calming warmth flowed through the room. It was a feeling of reassurance. You are not alone, it seemed to say. I am here. Where do we go? Jin asked the empty air. The ship did not answer with words. Instead, a star chart appeared in his mind. It was not a flat map. It was a three-dimensional image showing stars, planets, and trade routes. He could see the systems controlled by the loud, greedy factions Mireille had mentioned. He could feel their presence as areas of noise and conflict, but the ship also showed him quiet places. A small yellow star with a single green planet. A moon orbiting a gas giant, its surface covered in ice but with liquid water deep below. These places felt calm and peaceful in his mind. The Suriang was showing him where it could do its work, where life was quiet and needed tending. He focused on the green planet. He formed a clear thought. Take us there. Space outside the window blurred. The stars stretched into long lines of light. There was no sense of movement, no feeling of acceleration. It was like the universe itself was sliding past them. In a heartbeat, the blurring stopped. The green planet now filled the view. It was lush and covered in clouds. The ship descended through the atmosphere. Jin saw vast forests and wide blue oceans. It looked perfect. But as they flew lower, he saw the problem. Large sections of the forest were brown and dead. A sickness was spreading through the trees. He could feel it through the ship, a wrongness, a feeling of pain. The Suriang hovered over a dying section of forest. The trees were withered, their leaves gone. The ground was cracked and dry. What do we do? Jin thought. The ship responded by showing him an image. He saw the ship releasing a soft golden rain over the forest. The rain soaked into the ground and new green shoots pushed up through the dry earth. Jin understood. He formed the intent. He pictured the forest healing. He felt a deep desire for the life here to be restored. A low hum filled the ship. From its smooth hull, a fine glowing mist began to fall. It was not water. It was made of light and energy. It fell gently on the dead trees and the dry ground. Jin watched, his face pressed to the clear wall. As the mist touched the trees, the brown bark began to change color. It darkened, becoming rich and healthy. Tiny green buds appeared on the branches. The cracked ground softened, and small green plants began to sprout. The air itself seemed to brighten. He was not just watching. He could feel it. He could feel the forest waking up. He could feel the relief of the planet as the sickness was washed away. It was a slow, gentle feeling, like a fever breaking. It was the most wonderful thing he had ever experienced. He had spent his life taking things apart for scraps. Now he was putting something back together. He was making something whole. They stayed for a while until the entire section of forest was green and growing. The ship then rose back into space. Jin felt a deep sense of peace. This was what Mirai meant. This was the purpose. Over the next days, they visited other places. A desert moon where the ship helped a hidden underground river come to the surface, creating a small new oasis. A star that was burning too hot and fast, which the ship gently calmed, extending its life by millions of years. Jin learned to communicate with the Su-Ryang. He learned that his feelings were as important as his thoughts. If he felt rushed or angry, the ship would become sluggish and unresponsive. But when he was calm and his intent was pure, the ship worked with a graceful, powerful ease. He also learned about the ship's needs. It did not need fuel. It drew energy from the fabric of space itself, from the light of stars. It was a part of the universe, and the universe sustained it. One day, as they drifted near a quiet nebula, a new image appeared in his mind. It was a ship. A large, brutal-looking vessel with sharp angles and many weapons. It was a Vraxian raider, one of the loud, greedy factions. The image was a warning. The Su-Ryang had detected this ship nearby. Jin felt a spike of fear. He was not a fighter. His old plasma cutter was useless against a warship. The Su-Ryang felt his fear. It showed him another image. The ship was not attacking. It was not even pointing its weapons. It simply wrapped itself in light and became invisible. It did not just hide from sight. It hid from sensors. It became a ghost, undetectable. The Vraxian ship passed through the space where they were, its engines blazing. It did not slow down. It did not see them. It was just a loud, angry thing rushing through the silence, completely unaware of the ancient, powerful life right beside it. The raider ship jumped away, and the Su-Ryang became visible again. Jin let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The ship sent him a feeling of calm. There was no need to fight. To hide was enough. To continue the work was the only important thing. Jin looked out at the peaceful nebula. He finally understood. The great power of the Su-Ryang was not in destroying its enemies. Its power was in making its enemies irrelevant. While they shouted and fought over scraps, he and the ship could move silently, healing the universe one quiet garden at a time. He was no longer the scared scavenger from Sylvan. He was the keeper, and he had a universe to tend. Time lost its old meaning for Jin. Days and nights were marked not by a clock, but by the rhythm of the work. He and the Su-Ryang fell into a quiet routine. They would find a place in need, a silent cry of pain from a world or a star, and they would answer it. They visited a gas giant where the atmospheric pressures were crushing the delicate, floating life forms that lived there. The Su-Ryang did not change the planet. It could not. Instead, it created a stable, protected zone within the storm, a safe haven where the life could thrive away from the pressure. Jin felt the joy of the tiny creatures as they floated in their new sanctuary. They found a small, icy comet on a lonely path through the dark. Deep within its frozen heart were the seeds of life, dormant and waiting. The ship warmed the comet's core just enough. It nudged its trajectory, sending it on a new course towards a young, barren planet that orbited a steady star. In 1,000,000 years, that comet would bring life to a dead world. They had planted a garden for the future, Jin learned to feel the universe through the ship. He could feel the steady, slow heartbeat of old stars. He could feel the quick, bright energy of new ones being born. He learned the difference between the natural death of a star, which was a sad but peaceful feeling, and the violent death caused by war or mining, which felt like a scream. He never saw another Vraxian raider. The Surayang always knew they were coming long before they were a threat. It would wrap them in light and silence, and they would become ghosts. The loud, violent galaxy rushed by them, never knowing they were there. One day they were drifting near the edge of a spiral arm. The star density here was low. The space was dark and quiet. The Surayang showed him an image. It was a star system, but it was wrong. The star itself, a medium-sized yellow sun, was flickering. Its light was unstable. It pulsed weakly like a sick heart. Through the ship, Jin felt the star's pain. It was not old. It should have been stable for billions of years. But something was hurting it. The feeling was not natural. It was a wound. He focused on the system. There were 3 planets. The second one was a blue and green world, and on that world he could feel life. Millions of lives. They were simple lives. He felt the presence of plants, animals, and an intelligent species that was not very advanced. They were like children, and their son was dying. The cause of the sickness became clear. A massive mining operation was anchored close to the star. Giant machines were sucking raw energy from the star's corona, draining it to power some distant war. The operation was killing the star, and when the star died, the green world and all its life would die with it. The Surayang showed him the mining station. It was heavily armed, protected by a fleet of warships. These were not simple raiders. This was a well-organized, powerful group. To fight them would be to become like them. It would be loud and violent, but to do nothing was to let a world die. Jin stood in the center of the ship, looking at the flickering star. He thought about Mirai. He thought about the quiet heart she said he had. He thought about his purpose. He did not form an intent to fight. He did not form an intent to destroy the mining station. He formed an intent to heal. He pictured the star becoming strong and steady again. He felt a deep, powerful desire for its light to be constant and warm, for the life on the green world to be safe. He poured all his focus, all his calm into that one thought. The Surayang responded. It began to glow with a brilliant golden light. It did not move towards the mining station. It moved towards the star itself. Alarms would have been blaring on the mining station. Their sensors would have detected a massive energy signature approaching. But it was too late. The Surayang flew straight into the star. There was no heat, no fire. The liquid metal of the ship simply merged with the plasma of the star. Jin was not afraid. He was surrounded by a sea of incredible power. But he was safe inside his ship. He was a part of the star now. He could feel the wound. He could feel the greedy machines sucking the life away. The Surayang acted. It did not attack the machines, it simply changed the rules. Around the mining equipment, the star's plasma suddenly became calm, impossibly calm. The violent storms that the machines were built to harness simply stopped. The energy flow ceased. The machines, designed to siphon a raging river, found themselves in a still pond. They were useless. At the same time, the Surayang poured its own ancient energy into the star's core. It was a gentle, sustaining power. The flickering stopped. The star's pulse became strong and regular. Its light shone with a renewed, healthy glow. On the green world below, the strange dimming of the light would have stopped. The sun would have returned to its normal brightness. The children of that world would never know how close they came to death. The Surayang flowed back out of the star, reforming its dragon shape in the space nearby. The mining station was still there. Its weapons were still pointed. But they did not fire. They had no target. They had seen a ship fly into the sun and disappear, and then their operation had failed. They were confused and scared. The ship did not wait for them to understand. It wrapped itself in light and vanished. Jin looked back at the healthy, steady star. He felt its gratitude, a warm, sun-like feeling that washed over him. He had not conquered his enemy. He had made his enemy's purpose meaningless. The miners would leave. They had nothing to take here anymore. He had protected life. He had nurtured a quiet garden. He had been a good keeper. The Surayang sent him a new star chart showing another quiet place in need. A galaxy of endless work stretched out before him. Jin was no longer the man who had offered his final drop of water. He had become a source. He smiled, a calm, peaceful smile. He formed a new intent in his mind, and the water dragon turned silently, ready for the next journey.